The sky above the ruined city was burning. Flames rose from broken towers, and smoke covered the stars. The ground shook with every blast as alien war machines fired their weapons into the night. The battlefield was chaos, full of screams, fire, and steel. Among the soldiers running through the ruins was one man, a human fighter named Daniel. He was not a commander, not a hero yet, only a soldier who had seen too many battles. But on this night, his fate was about to change forever. Daniel moved through the destroyed streets, his rifle glowing with heat after constant fire. His unit was scattered, his friends lost in the endless fight. The enemies were everywhere, tall armored aliens with glowing eyes, hunting down anything that moved. Daniel's heart pounded, yet he kept fighting because retreat was not an option. As he turned a corner, he froze. There, in the center of the ruined square, was a young alien woman. She was surrounded by 3 enemy warriors, each holding long spears charged with deadly energy. The girl looked fragile compared to them, her silver hair glowing in the firelight, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel did not know her. He did not know why she was here, alone in the middle of a battlefield. But in that moment, he felt something strange, a pull deep inside his chest. He could not walk away. With a roar, Daniel fired his rifle, the bolts of energy striking one enemy in the chest. The alien warrior fell, but the other 2 turned on him instantly, their spears glowing brighter. Daniel kept moving, dodging behind broken walls, firing again and again. The alien woman stared at him with shock, as if she had never seen a human risk his life for her. One of the warriors threw his spear. The weapon spun through the air, a glowing streak of death flying straight toward the woman. Daniel saw it, and without thinking, he leaped. His body moved before his mind could stop him. The spear struck, piercing into Daniel's side. Pain exploded through his body, hot and sharp, but he did not fall. He shielded the woman with his body, pushing her down to the ground behind him. The force of the impact shook him, yet he stayed on his feet, holding his rifle tight. The alien warriors advanced, confident in their strength. But Daniel bared his teeth, firing with one hand even as blood dripped from his wound. One enemy fell. The last turned and fled, not expecting such madness from a human soldier. Silence returned for a moment, broken only by fire crackling around them. Daniel gasped for breath, his vision blurry. He turned to look at the girl he had saved. She was kneeling, staring at him with wide eyes filled with shock, and something else, something deeper. Why did you do that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel gave a weak smile, blood running down his armor. "Couldn't let them kill you," he said simply. It was the only answer he had. The girl touched his wound, her hands glowing with strange light. Daniel felt warmth spread through his body, dulling the pain, slowing the bleeding. She was no ordinary girl, he realized. But who was she? Why did the enemy want her dead? Before he could ask, the sound of more footsteps echoed through the ruins. More enemies were coming, their shadows moving between the flames. The girl's eyes grew wide again, but this time with determination. "We must go," she said, her voice stronger now. "If they find us, you will not survive a second time." Daniel struggled to stand, his strength returning only because of her strange healing. He nodded, gripping his rifle. The girl took his arm, helping him walk. They moved quickly through the burning ruins, leaving behind the square where fate had tied their lives together. But as Daniel looked at her, he knew something was not right. The enemy had hunted her with too much focus, too much fear. She was not just a refugee, not just another victim of war. There was something powerful, something royal about her presence. Daniel did not know yet that the girl he had just saved was no ordinary alien. He did not know that she carried a secret that could change the entire galaxy. And he did not know that his single act of bravery, jumping in front of a deadly spear, would be remembered in legends for centuries to come. All he knew in that moment was this. He had taken a spear meant for her, and now his life and hers were bound together by blood, fire, and destiny. The ruins stretched endlessly as Daniel and the alien girl moved through the fire and smoke. Every step was heavy for him, his wound burning even though her strange touch had slowed the bleeding. The battlefield roared behind them, yet she guided him through hidden paths as if she already knew this broken city better than anyone. Daniel's mind was racing. Who was she? Why would enemy warriors target her with such desperation? He looked at her silver hair shining faintly in the dark, at her glowing hands that had eased his pain. She was not a common civilian. That much was clear. They stopped in the shadow of a broken tower, hiding as patrols passed. Daniel leaned against the cold stone, his breath sharp and heavy. The girl placed her hand on his chest, checking his wound again. "You should not have done that," she whispered, her voice soft but trembling. "You almost died for me." Daniel gave a weak laugh, his lips pale. "I've seen worse," he muttered, even though the pain nearly broke him inside. Her eyes studied him with confusion, as if trying to understand why a stranger would sacrifice himself. In her world, maybe no one would do such a thing. But Daniel had lived by a simple rule. No one innocent deserved to die while he still breathed. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice low. The girl's expression froze for a moment. Then she looked away. "My name is Alara," she said carefully. "I cannot tell you more." Her hesitation only deepened his suspicion. Before Daniel could press further, the ground shook with the sound of approaching engines. Enemy transports hovered above the ruins, dropping squads of armored soldiers. Their voices echoed in a strange alien tongue, but Daniel understood enough. They were searching for her. Alara's face turned pale, her hand tightening on his arm. "They will not stop," she said quietly. "They will burn every street to find me." Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but his soldier's heart refused. He tightened his grip on his rifle and looked at her. "Then we don't let them catch you," he said firmly. Her silver eyes widened slightly at his words, but she nodded, determination flickering in her gaze. They moved again, slipping through rubble and broken walls. At one point, Daniel stumbled, his vision darkening from blood loss. Alara knelt beside him, her hands glowing brighter this time, sending a surge of warmth through his veins. It felt like fire and light mixed together, repairing what should not be reparable. Daniel looked at her in shock, realizing she was using power far beyond medical science. She quickly pulled her hands back, hiding them under her cloak. "Do not ask," she whispered, her voice urgent. "You are safer if you do not know." But the human mind never rests. Daniel's thoughts turned darker. If she was so important, if she had power that strong, then protecting her would draw even more danger. He had already taken a spear for her, already risked his life. But the real storm was only beginning. As night deepened, they reached the edge of the city where a wrecked shuttle lay half buried in debris. Alara stopped, scanning the horizon carefully. "This ship still works," she said softly, touching the metallic surface with her glowing fingers. Strange symbols lit up under her touch, machinery humming back to life. Daniel stepped back in awe. "You can start ships with your hands?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. She looked at him, her lips tightening as if she regretted showing him too much. "It is a gift," she answered simply. The shuttle's engines rumbled to life, lights flickering in the cockpit. Daniel climbed inside, still weak but forcing himself to move. As the ship lifted, enemy fire streaked across the sky, bright lances of energy chasing them. Daniel grabbed the controls while Alara sat beside him, guiding him through hidden routes among the stars. She spoke quickly, telling him which paths to take, which asteroid fields to cross. Every command was perfect, almost as if she had traveled these routes all her life. The chase was fierce, enemy ships swarming behind them. Daniel pushed the engines to their limit, sweat running down his face. Alara placed her hand on the console, and suddenly the ship leapt faster, as if her will itself fueled the machine. Together they escaped, vanishing into the endless dark of space, leaving their hunters behind. For a moment, silence filled the shuttle, broken only by the hum of engines. Daniel leaned back, exhausted, his body trembling from blood loss and adrenaline. Alara sat quietly, her silver eyes fixed on the stars. He wanted to ask again who she really was, why she had such strange powers, why the enemy would burn cities to capture her. But something in her silence held him back. Instead, Daniel simply said, "You saved my life." Alara turned to him slowly, her face unreadable. "And you saved mine," she whispered, almost as if it was hard for her to admit. For a long moment, their eyes met, human and alien, bound by a choice made in fire and blood. What Daniel did not know was that his journey had only just begun. What he did not see yet was the weight of the crown she carried, hidden behind her silence. For Alara was not just a survivor, not just a stranger. She was a secret that could shake the galaxy. And Daniel, the human soldier who had jumped in front of Spear, was now tied to her destiny, whether he wanted it or not. The stolen shuttle drifted into the void of space, its engines glowing faintly as it cut through the darkness. Inside, Daniel sat at the controls, his hands firm but trembling from exhaustion. Beside him, Alara watched the navigation screen with focused eyes, guiding him with calm yet urgent words. Behind them, the shadow of war stretched, and the hunters were not far behind. At first, silence filled the shuttle, broken only by the soft hum of engines. But the peace did not last. Red lights flashed on the console as Alara's hand moved over the glowing symbols. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice heavy with certainty. "They will not let me go." Daniel cursed under his breath, tightening his grip on the controls. Through the viewport, several enemy ships appeared, sleek and sharp like blades, their engines leaving trails of fire. The enemy had found them, and they were faster, stronger, and many in number. Alara's silver eyes glowed faintly as she leaned closer to the console. "Turn here," she said, pointing toward a dense asteroid field ahead. Daniel looked at her in disbelief. "That's suicide," he muttered. "One wrong move, and we'll be smashed into dust." But her voice carried no hesitation. "They cannot follow us closely there. It is our only chance." Daniel took a deep breath, his soldier's instincts screaming against the odds. Yet something about Alara's calm confidence pushed him forward. With a sudden pull on the controls, the shuttle dove into the asteroid field. Massive rocks drifted in silence, colliding slowly with each other, glowing faintly in the starlight. The ship shook violently as Daniel twisted through narrow gaps, the enemy fire chasing them into the maze. The first enemy ship tried to follow too closely. Its wing clipped an asteroid, and in seconds the whole vessel exploded in a burst of fire. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "One down," he muttered, his eyes sharp. Alara's lips curved faintly, but her expression quickly hardened again. "There are many more," she warned. The chase turned into a deadly dance among drifting rocks. Daniel pushed the shuttle beyond its limits, his reflexes sharp, his breath steady. Alara guided him with perfect timing, pointing out paths no normal pilot could see. Sometimes her hands brushed over the controls, and the ship responded with unnatural speed. Daniel noticed, but he said nothing, for survival mattered more than questions. The enemy ships fired relentlessly, their blasts tearing apart smaller asteroids around them. Debris rained down like fire, shaking the shuttle. One blast struck the side, alarms ringing inside. Daniel gritted his teeth, forcing the shuttle to spin and weave. His training had prepared him for battles, but this chase felt like madness. For a brief moment, they broke through the far edge of the asteroid field. Daniel exhaled, thinking they had escaped. But then, larger ships appeared in the distance, enemy cruisers blocking their path. The trap was closing. Alara's face grew pale, her hands tightening into fists. "They knew we would come this way," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Daniel's jaw clenched, sweat running down his face. He had fought armies before, but against an entire fleet, there was no chance. Still, retreat was not in his blood. He turned to Alara, his eyes blazing. "Then tell me what you're not saying," he demanded. "Who are you? Why are they willing to burn half a galaxy just to catch you?" Her lips trembled, but before she could answer, another wave of fire struck the shuttle, sending it spinning. Alara's hands pressed against the console, her eyes glowing brighter. The ship steadied, its engines roaring with sudden strength. Daniel looked at her in shock, realizing her power was more than healing. She could bend machines to her will, but her face was filled with pain as if every second drained her spirit. The shuttle shot forward like a comet, breaking past the enemy cruisers in a burst of impossible speed. Daniel stared in disbelief, his voice hoarse. "What did you just do?" Alara turned to him, her silver eyes shimmering with a sadness he could not understand. "I did what I must," she whispered, "but every time I use this power, they will sense me, they will come again." Her words sent a chill through him. They were not safe, not even for a moment. The enemy would hunt them through every star, every shadow, until they caught her. Daniel leaned back, exhausted but unwilling to give up. He had already taken a spear for her, already fought impossible odds. Now he was bound to her fate, whatever it might be. The shuttle drifted into the deep unknown. Stars stretched before them like endless roads of light. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, hearing only the steady hum of the ship and Alara's soft breathing beside him. He wanted answers, but deep down he knew the truth. Answers would only bring more danger. Still, he could not walk away, not anymore, and so the chase through the stars had only begun. The hunters would not rest. The war would not stop. And somewhere in the silence of space, the secret of who Alara truly was waited to be revealed. The shuttle floated silently in the endless dark, its engines humming low as Daniel adjusted the controls. For hours they had drifted between stars, hoping to shake off the hunters. But both he and Alara knew the truth. The enemy would never stop, not until she was in their hands. Daniel's wounds still ached beneath the bandages, though her strange power had kept him alive. Every time he looked at her, questions burned inside him. Who was she really? Why did she risk herself to heal him, yet hide her truth with such fear? The silence between them grew heavier as the stars slid past. Finally, Daniel broke it, his voice low but firm. "I deserve to know," he said, staring at her silver eyes. "Why do they hunt you? Why did I nearly die for you?" Alara's lips parted, but no words came, only a long silence that felt sharper than a blade. Suddenly, alarms screamed across the shuttle, red lights flashing across the console. Enemy ships had found them again, slipping from hyperspace with deadly precision. Lasers fired, shaking the shuttle, sparks bursting inside. Daniel cursed and pulled the controls, weaving between the blasts. But there were too many. The enemy hailed them, their voice booming across the comms. "Surrender the girl, and you may yet live." Daniel shot a glance at her, his voice a growl. "They want you, not me, why?" Alara's hands trembled on her lap, her silver eyes glowing faintly. She looked at Daniel with something close to despair, then something harder. "I did not want you to know," she whispered, "but you will not stop protecting me unless I tell you." Daniel's breath caught in his chest as she stood, pulling back the cloak that had hidden her form. Light shimmered across her skin, faint markings glowing like starlight across her arms and neck. Her hair shone brighter, her voice deeper with authority. "I am Alara Vera," she said, each word heavy with weight. "First daughter of the Celestian throne, rightful heir to the empire your people only speak of in whispers." Daniel froze, his hands tightening on the controls. The words struck him like a hammer. A princess, not just any alien, but a ruler of a star-spanning empire. He stared at her, memories flashing back. The way the enemy hunted her, the power in her hands, the sadness in her eyes. It all made sense now. "You're a princess," he whispered, almost unable to believe it. Alara lowered her gaze, her voice softer now. Yes, the lost princess, the one they swore was dead. Her words echoed in the cramped shuttle. They killed my family, seized my throne, and they will not rest until the last of my blood is gone. The enemy ships closed in, their weapons locking on. Daniel's mind spun with disbelief, yet he tightened his grip on the controls. So all this time, he muttered, I wasn't just protecting a stranger. I was protecting the heir of an empire. Alara met his gaze, her eyes shimmering with sorrow. And now you are part of my fate, she whispered, even if it destroys you. The shuttle shook violently as enemy fire struck again. Daniel's voice turned hard, his soldier's spirit burning. Then let them come, he said. I didn't take a spear for you just to give you away now. Alara stared at him, her breath catching. For the first time since they met, she smiled faintly, a fragile, almost broken smile. You are a fool, she whispered, but the bravest fool I have ever known. Together they fought back, Daniel's hands moving across the controls with sharp skill. Alara placed her glowing hands on the console again, the shuttle surging forward with unnatural speed. Enemy ships exploded behind them as they twisted through space. But the revelation had already changed everything. Daniel no longer saw her as a stranger. She was a princess, hunted, fragile yet powerful, carrying the weight of a broken empire on her shoulders. And he, a human soldier with no throne, no legacy, had tied himself to her destiny with blood and fire. As the shuttle finally slipped into the shadow of a nebula, the enemy lost their trail for the moment. The stars outside shimmered faintly, wrapping them in ghostly light. Daniel leaned back, his body aching, his mind spinning. He looked at Alara, who now sat silently, her royal bearing unhidden. He whispered almost to himself, a princess. Alara turned to him, her eyes steady. Now you understand, she said softly. If they catch me, the galaxy falls. Her words carried both fear and fire. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again with the same steel he had shown on the battlefield. Then they'll have to go through me first, he said, his voice steady. Alara looked at him, and for the first time, she felt something she had not felt since her world burned. Hope. The nebula surrounded them like a veil of light, its glowing clouds hiding the shuttle from enemy scanners. Inside the cockpit, Daniel and Alara sat in silence, the only sound the steady hum of the ship's engines. For the first time since the chaos began, they had a moment to breathe. But silence did not bring peace. It only left space for questions. Daniel leaned back in his seat, his chest still bandaged, his body aching with exhaustion. He turned to Alara, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. So, Princess, he said quietly, you really expect me to believe I'm flying next to the rightful heir of an empire? Alara met his gaze without flinching, her voice steady. You saw the power in my hands. You saw how they hunt me. You already know the truth. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. Yeah, I know the truth, he muttered. I just don't know what it means for me. Alara's expression softened, her voice lower now. It means you carry danger with you as long as you stay by my side, and yet you still protect me. He gave her a faint smile, bitter but honest. I didn't take that spear just to hand you over now, he said firmly. For a moment, Alara looked away, her face shadowed with sorrow. No one has ever done what you did, she whispered. In my world, loyalty is bought with bloodlines and power, not with sacrifice. The words hung between them, heavier than the silence. Daniel felt something stir in his chest, something more than duty. It was not just about survival anymore, not just about protecting an innocent. There was a bond forming, fragile, dangerous, but undeniable. Before either could speak again, the console beeped, warning of movement outside the nebula. Enemy patrols were searching, their scanners sweeping the edges of the glowing clouds. Daniel's jaw tightened as he gripped the controls. They're still after us, he muttered. They won't stop. Alara placed her hand gently on his arm, her touch calming but firm. "Then we fight together," she said, her voice carrying quiet strength. And fight they did. When enemy ships spotted them, Daniel's reflexes guided the shuttle through sharp turns, weaving between clouds of energy and asteroid fragments. Alara sat beside him, her hands glowing as she reinforced the shields, her power flowing into the ship itself. Every blast of enemy fire shook them, but together they struck back. Daniel's aim was deadly, his human instincts sharper than the enemy expected. Alara's power shielded them at the very edge of destruction. Hours of running and fighting blurred together. By the time they lost the last of the pursuers, both were drained, their bodies and spirits heavy with fatigue. Daniel slumped in his chair, his voice hoarse. "Remind me never to argue with your idea of safe routes," he muttered. Alara actually laughed softly, the sound surprising even her. For a moment, the fear in her eyes was replaced by something brighter, something warmer. As the shuttle drifted into quieter space, Daniel went to the back of the cabin, searching for supplies. He found ration packs and water, handing one to Alara. She accepted it with a faint nod, watching him carefully as he sat across from her. "You fight as if you have nothing to lose," she said softly. Daniel's expression darkened for a moment, his eyes distant. "Maybe I don't," he whispered, then shook his head. "But that doesn't mean I'll let them win." Alara studied him quietly, her royal bearing softening. In her world, warriors were trained for duty, loyalty demanded by birth. But Daniel's courage was different, raw, reckless, unshaken by the fact that she was more than he could ever imagine. He was human, and yet he fought for her as if her life mattered more than his own. As they rested, Alara allowed herself to close her eyes briefly, her head leaning against the wall. Daniel watched her, the silver light of the nebula painting her features like a dream. For the first time, he saw not just a princess or a secret heir, but someone tired, someone burdened, someone in need of trust. And though he could not explain why, he felt his own resolve harden. He would not abandon her, no matter what the galaxy threw at them. The bond between them was no longer born of chance, but of choice, a fragile thread of trust, woven in fire and blood. And even though danger chased them from every corner of the stars, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. Together, they had a chance. The shuttle finally broke through the quiet void, its battered engines carrying it toward a hidden beacon deep in uncharted space. Alara's voice was steady as she guided Daniel toward the signal, her words filled with cautious hope. "There's a place ahead," she whispered, "a rebel outpost. Old allies of my family. They will give us shelter." Daniel narrowed his eyes, but said nothing. Allies. The word carried weight, but after so many battles, he trusted only what he saw with his own eyes. Still, he followed her lead, because trust was all they had left. The shuttle descended onto a desolate moon, where metallic towers rose from the dust. As they landed, figures emerged from the shadows, armored but not like the enemy. Their leader, a tall alien with sharp features and scarred skin, stepped forward. "Princess Alara," he said, bowing slightly, "we thought you were lost." Alara lowered her hood, her silver hair glowing faintly under the pale light. "I live," she said firmly, "and I need your help. The throne must rise again." The rebels murmured among themselves, some filled with awe, others with doubt. Daniel stayed close, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning every corner. Inside the base, the rebels offered food and rest. Daniel sat apart, his instincts uneasy. The walls of the outpost felt too quiet, too hollow, as if something waited beneath the surface. Alara spoke with the rebel leader in hushed tones, her voice carrying both command and desperation. She told him of her survival, of the battles, of Daniel's sacrifice. The leader nodded, but his eyes flickered with something Daniel did not like: greed, or maybe ambition. Later, when the halls grew silent, Daniel confronted Alara. "I don't trust him," he said quietly, His eyes follow you like you're not a princess, but a prize. Alara sighed, her shoulders heavy. These people have waited years in hiding, she whispered. Some are loyal, some are not. But without them I cannot take back my throne. Daniel clenched his jaw. But he stayed, because leaving her side was not an option. That night, as the base slept, Daniel's instincts proved true. The leader crept into the command chamber, sending a secret transmission. His voice was cold as he spoke. I have her, the last heir, prepare the reward. Betrayal dripped from every word. Daniel caught the echo of the transmission. His soldiers' ears trained for whispers in the dark. He stormed into the chamber, his rifle aimed. The traitor froze, his face twisting into a sneer. You think you can protect her forever? Human? He spat. She is worth more than your life, more than your whole species. Before Daniel could fire, alarms blared across the base. Enemy ships dropped from orbit, their engines roaring, their weapons primed. The betrayal was complete, the rebels scattering in fear as the outpost shook under bombardment. Alara ran into the chamber, her eyes blazing as she saw the truth. You betrayed us, she hissed, her voice filled with fury. The leader only laughed, stepping back toward the shadows. I chose survival, he said coldly, and profit. Daniel grabbed Alara's arm, pulling her toward the hangar. We don't have time for him, he shouted. We need to run. The base erupted in fire as enemy troops stormed the halls. Daniel fought with raw fury, his rifle blazing, cutting down enemies left and right. Alara stood beside him, her hands glowing, shields of light blocking blasts that would have ended them both. Together, they forced their way to the shuttle, the base collapsing behind them. The engines roared as they lifted off, fire and betrayal burning in their wake. From a viewport, Daniel watched the outpost explode under enemy bombardment. The rebels were gone, their betrayal costing them everything. Alara sat in silence, her eyes wet but unbroken. Her voice was a whisper, heavy with sorrow. Even those who once swore loyalty would sell me for coin. Daniel looked at her, his voice rough but steady. Then trust me, I don't need a throne, I don't need a reward. All I need is to keep you alive. Alara turned to him, her gaze searching his face. For a long moment, she said nothing, then finally whispered, Then you are the only ally I have left. The shuttle vanished into the stars once again, carrying only two souls bound by fire, betrayal, and a fragile bond of trust that no army could break. The shuttle cut through the dark, leaving behind the ashes of betrayal. Daniel's hands were steady on the controls, his eyes sharp despite the exhaustion burning in his veins. Beside him, Alara sat silently, her gaze locked on the stars ahead, her face calm but her heart heavy. Every loss, every sacrifice, every betrayal had brought them to this moment. Her voice finally broke the silence, soft but firm. We cannot keep running, she whispered. If I hide forever, my people remain slaves, and the enemy keeps the throne. Daniel glanced at her, his voice rough. Then what's the plan, princess? Alara's eyes gleamed like silver fire. We take the fight to them, she said, to the throne world itself. Daniel's jaw tightened. It was madness, but it was the only path left. He gave a short nod, his soldier's spirit unshaken. Then we finish this, he muttered, one way or another. The throne world rose before them after days of travel, a vast planet covered in shining spires and endless cities. But now its beauty was twisted by enemy rule. Warships circled above it like predators. Alara's hand tightened into a fist, her voice trembling with both fury and sorrow. My home, she whispered. They turned it into a cage. They landed on the edge of the capital, the shuttle hidden in the ruins of an ancient temple. From there, Daniel and Alara led a strike into the heart of the city. Resistance fighters, small groups still loyal to her bloodline, emerged from the shadows to join them. For the first time, Daniel saw that her people still had hope, and that hope was tied to her. The march to the palace was a storm of fire and steel. Enemy soldiers poured into the streets, their weapons blazing. Daniel fought at the front, his rifle singing with every shot. Alara unleashed her power without restraint now. Shields of light blocking enemy fire, blasts of pure energy cutting down her foes. Together, human soldier and alien princess became a force no one could stop. Finally, they reached the throne hall. Massive doors of silver and stone torn open by Alara's power. Inside waited the enemy warlord, towering in dark armor, his blade glowing with crackling energy. His voice thundered across the hall. "You are a child clinging to a dead throne," he spat. "And you, human, you bleed for a cause not your own, foolish to the end." Daniel stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Maybe it's not my cause," he growled, "but it's my choice." The warlord roared and charged, his blade cutting through the air. Daniel met him head-on, his rifle firing, his body moving with desperate strength. The clash was brutal, sparks flying with every strike. Alara stood at Daniel's side, her power surging brighter than ever. Together they fought the warlord, human will and alien power striking as one. The battle shook the hall, walls crumbling, fire raining from above. In the final moment, Daniel threw himself into the strike, his blade cutting across the warlord's chest. At the same time, Alara unleashed a storm of light that shattered the dark armor into pieces. The warlord fell, his scream echoing as silence claimed the throne. The hall filled with the sound of rebels cheering. Alara stood tall, her silver eyes glowing. The rightful heir returned. But instead of walking to the throne, she turned to Daniel. Her voice steady, strong, yet filled with warmth. "I am not alone anymore," she whispered, "because you chose me." Daniel, bruised and bloodied, gave a faint smile. "I didn't choose a throne," he said softly. "I chose you." The rebels knelt, voices rising in unison. The galaxy had a new queen, one who carried both power and compassion. And at her side stood a human soldier, the one who had taken a spear for her without knowing who she was. Their story would be told across the stars, of courage, sacrifice, and the bond that changed everything. As the sun rose over the throne world, Alara stood before her people, her hand reaching for Daniel's. Together, they faced the galaxy not as ruler and soldier, but as allies, as something greater. Hope had returned, and the war was over. But their journey together had only just begun.